Have you ever wondered why people use different names for the same country? When we talk about the island nation in northwestern Europe, you might hear Britain, Great Britain, or United Kingdom. It can be quite confusing, not just for visitors, but sometimes even for the people who live there. Why does one country have so many names, and what is the real difference between them? The answer is not simple. It is a story that stretches back thousands of years, woven from the threads of conquest, union, and the ever-changing identities of the people who call these islands home. Understanding these names means we must journey through history, exploring the very foundations of this complex and fascinating nation. The United Kingdom, in its simplest form, is a country made up of other countries. Its full official title is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. This clues us in to its composite nature. It includes England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Each of these places has its own unique history, culture, and sense of self. The name United Kingdom refers to the political union of these lands under one government. Great Britain, on the other hand, is a geographical term. It refers to the largest island in the archipelago, the one that contains England, Scotland, and Wales. The multiple names exist because the country itself is a collection of formerly separate entities that came together over many centuries. This layering of names reflects a deep and often turbulent history. It is a tale of shifting borders and changing allegiances. The names we use today are like geological strata, with each layer telling us something about a different era. From the ancient Celts to the Roman invaders, from Anglo-Saxon warlords to Norman kings, and from the grand unions of crowns to modern political settlements, each period has left its mark on the map and on the language used to describe it. To unravel this puzzle, we need to peel back these layers one by one, starting from the very beginning, when the islands first entered the historical record under a name given to them by a powerful empire. The distinction between Britain and UK is therefore both geographical and political. Think of it like this. If you are standing anywhere in England, Scotland, or Wales, you are on the island of Great Britain. You are also at the same time within the political state known as the United Kingdom. If you are in Belfast, you are in Northern Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom, but not part of the island of Great Britain. This complexity is why the names are often used interchangeably in casual conversation, though they have precise meanings. It is a linguistic quirk, born from a long and intricate process of nation building, a story we are about to explore. Long before England, Scotland, or Wales existed as we know them, the Romans arrived on these shores. It was they who gave the main island its first widely recorded name, Britannia. When Roman legions under the command of Julius Caesar first made contact in 55 and 54 BC, they encountered a misty, mysterious land at the very edge of their known world. The people they met were Celtic tribes, and the Romans referred to them as the Britanni. The name itself likely came from an even older Celtic term, perhaps Britannia, which may have meant the painted people or the tattooed people, referring to the tribal practice of decorating their bodies with woad. The Romans Latinized this term, and the land became Britannia. For the Romans, Britannia was a wild and untamed frontier. After a full-scale invasion in 43 AD under Emperor Claudius, they established a province that would last for nearly 400 years. This province, also named Britannia, covered most of modern-day England and Wales. The Romans built roads, forts, and cities, many of which still exist today, like Londinium, now London, and Eboracum, now York. They saw Britannia as a valuable but challenging part of their empire, a place of mineral wealth, but also of fierce resistance from the unconquered tribes in the north, in what is now Scotland. The name Britannia became synonymous with this specific Roman territory, a defined and governed part of their vast domain. The Roman influence cemented the name Britannia in the historical and geographical consciousness of Europe. Even after the Roman legions withdrew in the early 5th century, leaving the province to fend for itself against new waves of invaders, the name endured. It became a kind of ghost name, a memory of a lost unity and a more connected past. The concept of Britain as a single entity, even after it had splintered into numerous warring kingdoms, was a powerful Roman legacy. This classical name would lie dormant for centuries, but it would be revived much later by kings and queens who sought to evoke that same sense of grandeur and island-wide authority. Today, the name Britannia is still used in a symbolic and ceremonial way. You can see it on coins, where the figure of Britannia, a helmeted female warrior with a trident and shield, has been a symbol of British naval power and national identity since the 17th century. She represents a direct link back to that Roman past, a personification of the island itself. The name serves as a powerful reminder that the idea of a unified Britain is ancient, predating the nations that would eventually form it. It is the foundational layer upon which all the other names and identities were built, an echo of an empire that shaped the destiny of these islands forever. Before the Romans and long after they departed, the British Isles were home to a diverse tapestry of peoples. The earliest inhabitants were Celtic tribes who had spread across much of Western Europe. These were not a single unified people, but a collection of distinct groups with their own languages, customs and territories. In the south and east, tribes like the Catuvellauni and the Iceni farmed the fertile lands. In the rugged terrains of the west and north, groups like the Silures in Wales and the Brigantes in northern England held sway. These were the original Britannia the Romans encountered, a patchwork of societies living on the islands they called home, which the Greeks had earlier referred to as the Britannic Islands. When the Roman Empire crumbled and its legions left Britannia around 410 AD, a power vacuum was created. This ushered in a new era of migration and conflict. Germanic tribes from mainland Europe, the Angles, the Saxons and the Jutes, began to cross the North Sea. They were initially invited as mercenaries, but soon began to settle, pushing the native Romano-British, the descendants of the Celtic tribes, westward into what would become Wales and Cornwall, and northward into Scotland. These newcomers established their own kingdoms, such as Wessex, Mercia and Northumbria. The land they settled became known as Angleland, which over time evolved into England. This period, often called the Dark Ages, was a time of fragmentation. The idea of a single Britannia was lost, replaced by a mosaic of competing kingdoms. In the north, the Picts and the Scots vied for control of the land beyond the old Roman frontier, eventually uniting to form the Kingdom of Alba, the precursor to Scotland. In the west, Welsh kingdoms like Gwynedd and Powys fiercely maintained their Celtic identity and independence. For centuries, the island of Great Britain was a battleground of cultures and languages, with Anglo-Saxon English spoken in the east and Brythonic Celtic languages surviving in the west. The unity of Roman Britannia was a distant memory. Then came another wave of invaders, the Vikings. From the late 8th century, Norse raiders terrorized the coasts and eventually began to conquer and settle large parts of England, creating a territory known as the Danelaw. This added another layer of cultural and linguistic influence. Finally, in 1066, the Normans, who were Vikings that had settled in France, invaded and conquered England. Led by William the Conqueror, they established a new French-speaking ruling class. The Normans were powerful administrators and kingdom builders. They solidified the borders of England, subjugated Wales, and cast an ambitious eye towards Scotland, setting the stage for the eventual and often forceful unification of the island. For hundreds of years, the island of Great Britain was divided, most notably between the powerful Kingdom of England to the south and the resilient Kingdom of Scotland to the north. These two nations had separate monarchs, parliaments and legal systems, and their relationship was often hostile, marked by centuries of warfare and cross-border raids. The idea of uniting them into a single state seemed remote. However, a twist of fate involving royal bloodlines began to change everything. Queen Elizabeth I of England died in 1603 without any children to inherit her throne, creating a succession crisis that could have plunged the country into civil war. The closest living relative with a strong claim was her cousin, King James VI of Scotland. In a moment of immense historical significance, he inherited the English throne, becoming King James I of England as well. This event is known as the Union of the Crowns. For the first time, England and Scotland were ruled by the same monarch. James I now styled himself King of Great Britain, deliberately reviving the old Roman term Britannia to signify his rule over the entire island. He dreamed of a more complete political union, a single kingdom with one law and one parliament, but both the English and Scottish parliaments were deeply suspicious of the idea and resisted his efforts. Despite sharing a king, England and Scotland remained legally separate countries for another century. They continued to have their own governments, churches, and economic policies, which sometimes led to significant friction between them. The 17th century was a turbulent period of civil war, religious conflict, and revolution in both kingdoms. It became increasingly clear to leaders on both sides that the existing arrangement was unstable. By the early 1700s, political and economic pressures were mounting. Scotland was facing severe financial difficulties, particularly after a disastrous attempt to establish a colony in Panama, while England was concerned about securing its northern border and ensuring the royal succession. These pressures culminated in the Acts of Union of 1707. After lengthy and often contentious negotiations, the parliaments of England and Scotland both passed acts that dissolved their separate states and created a new single entity, the Kingdom of Great Britain. A new Parliament of Great Britain was established in London at Westminster, combining representatives from both former kingdoms. This was the birth of Great Britain as a political state, not just a geographical island. The name was chosen specifically to reflect a partnership rather than an English takeover, creating a new British identity to overlay the Old English and Scottish ones. With the creation of the Kingdom of Great Britain in 1707, the largest island was politically unified. However, the story of the modern United Kingdom was not yet complete. Across the Irish Sea lay the neighbouring island of Ireland. England had held influence and control over parts of Ireland for centuries, a presence that began with the Norman invasion of Ireland in the 12th century. Over time, English control solidified, and by the early modern period, Ireland was effectively a client kingdom, ruled by a Protestant elite loyal to the British Crown, while the majority of the native Irish population remained Catholic and often resentful of English domination. The late 18th century was an age of revolution, inspired by the American and French revolutions. A movement for greater Irish autonomy, and in some cases full independence, grew stronger. In 1798, a major rebellion led by the United Irishmen, who sought to establish an independent republic, broke out. The rebellion was brutally suppressed by British forces, but it deeply alarmed the government in London. Leaders like Prime Minister William Pitt the Younger feared that a volatile and semi-independent Ireland could become a strategic weakness, a potential staging ground for an invasion by Britain's great rival, Napoleonic France. To prevent this and to assert more direct control, the British government decided that a full political union was necessary. They believed that incorporating Ireland directly into the state of Great Britain would secure the islands and help to manage the deep-seated religious and political divisions there. Through a combination of political pressure, persuasion, and outright bribery, the British government convinced the Irish Parliament in Dublin to vote itself out of existence. This was a hugely controversial move, opposed by many in Ireland who saw it as the end of their national sovereignty and a formalisation of their colonial status. The result was the Acts of Union 1800, which came into effect on the first day of the new century, January 1st, 1801. These acts merged the Kingdom of Great Britain with the Kingdom of Ireland. A new country was born, and it needed a new name to reflect its expanded territory. Thus, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland was created. The iconic Union flag was updated, adding the red saltire of St. Patrick to represent Ireland, creating the design we know today. For the next 120 years, this would be the official name of the state, encompassing both large islands under a single parliament and crown. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, formed in 1801, lasted for just over a century. However, the union with Ireland was fraught with difficulty from the very beginning. The Irish question dominated British politics for much of the 19th and early 20th centuries. Widespread campaigns for land reform, religious emancipation for the Catholic majority, and Home Rule, a form of self-government for Ireland, grew in intensity. The desire for Irish independence had never disappeared, and it erupted violently with the Easter Rising in Dublin in 1916, an event that dramatically shifted public opinion in Ireland in favour of a complete break from Britain. Following the First World War, the Irish War of Independence was fought from 1919 to 1921 between Irish Republican forces and the British state. The conflict ended with the signing of the Anglo-Irish Treaty in 1921. This treaty partitioned the island of Ireland. 26 counties in the south and west were to become the Irish Free State, a self-governing dominion within the British Empire which would later evolve into the fully independent Republic of Ireland. 6 counties in the northeast, which had a majority Protestant and Unionist population who wished to remain part of the kingdom, were given the choice to opt out of the Free State, which they promptly did. This partition led to another name change for the country. Since the vast majority of Ireland was no longer part of the state, calling it the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland was no longer accurate. In 1927, the British Parliament formally recognised this new reality by passing the Royal and Parliamentary Titles Act. This act officially changed the name of the country to what it remains to this day, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. This name precisely describes the political entity, a union that includes the island of Great Britain, England, Scotland and Wales, and the northern part of the island of Ireland. So the full official name we have today is the product of this long and often painful history of union, rebellion and separation. It reflects the country's current and exact political geography. The United Kingdom part signifies the political union. Great Britain specifies the main island. Northern Ireland accounts for the territory on the neighbouring island. Every part of the name tells a piece of the story. It is a title born not from a single moment of creation, but from 1,000 years of shifting borders, crowns and allegiances, culminating in the complex political arrangement that exists in the 21st century. So after this long journey through history, we can see why Britain and UK are so often used interchangeably. In everyday language, Britain serves as a convenient and familiar shorthand for the United Kingdom. When people say they are from Britain, they are usually referring to the entire UK. It is shorter, simpler, and carries a sense of historical weight that connects back to the Roman Britannia. The term Great Britain is also frequently used in the same way, even though it technically excludes Northern Ireland. This casual use is common in media, sports, as in Team GB at the Olympics, and daily conversation where geographical precision is less important than easy communication. However, these names carry different weights and meanings for the people who live within the UK's borders. Identity here is a complex and layered concept. A person from Scotland might call themselves Scottish first, and then British. Similarly, someone from Wales might identify as Welsh before British. In England, the terms English and British are often used more interchangeably, as England is the largest and most populous country within the Union. For many in Northern Ireland, identity is particularly complex and often tied to political affiliation. Some identify as Irish, some as British, and some as Northern Irish, with each label carrying significant cultural and political meaning. The name Britain or British can therefore be both a unifying and a contested term. For some, it represents a shared history, culture, and set of values forged over centuries of union. It speaks to a collective identity built around institutions like the monarchy, the NHS and the BBC, as well as a shared language and global influence. For others, particularly those who support independence movements in Scotland or Wales or a united Ireland, the term British can feel like a label imposed by a historically dominant English state. It can seem to overshadow their own distinct national identities, which have their own rich histories predating the unions. Ultimately, the choice of name, whether UK, Britain or Great Britain, often depends on context. For official political or legal matters, the United Kingdom is the correct term. But in the landscape of the heart and mind, the names are much more fluid. They are symbols of a multinational state still navigating its own identity, a place where you can be English, Scottish, Welsh or Northern Irish and also British, all at the same time. The story of its names is the story of its people, a tale of distinct nations joined together, still debating what it means to share a single kingdom. If you found this story about Britain's name fascinating, don't forget to like, subscribe and share your thoughts below. What country name do you want us to uncover next? Type it in the comments.